Okay, let's talk about the water people, the feelers or intuitives, Cancer, Scorpio, or Pisces. So I got a lot of questions in the last video, so referencing that real quick. Moon is your internal, what you do with yourself. The more that you do that, the deeper you go with your internal, the more access you have to your gifts, to be in your solar energy, your sun sign, how you're mixing and mingling with other people out in this world. And so with water, and lots of questions around like, what does it mean to feel? And I loved all the innuendos. They were cracking me up. Feel myself to feel other people. Sounds like fun. So when we talk about feelings and the idea of like intuiting and your intuition, that sensing and knowing, it's these ways of communicating and understanding outside of language, right? And when it's called feelings, because we feel them in our body, okay? So it's a different way of interacting with ourselves in the environment versus like air and up in the brain, right? So this is in the body. And water, for the energy healers, we talked about air, mind out, fire up. Water penetrates down deep, 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 deep into the roots, right? Water is always traveling down and settling at the deepest point possible. And so when we think about, water and water moving and flowing and sculpting, this idea of like being in flow with what's coming up. And water is not linear. It's not, this to this. It's all around, right? There's so much movement. It's so fluid, to keep with the metaphors. And so, the other thing too is that water doesn't have a shape. We used some metaphor before around like the modes for cardinal, fixed, and mutable. And I have one of those for this. And Scorpio would probably be the most defined in the water, but it takes the shape of the container that it's in. And there's also it's influenced or impressionable, because you think about dropping a drop of ink into water and then the whole thing changes, right? So this idea of like empathy and being able to feel not only your own feelings but other people's feelings, and how blurry that can get. So sometimes emotional boundaries are kind of a sticking point for some water placements. But then this idea of like sensitivity as superpower. So this is really intuitive, because it is the language of the soul. Like the soul is not using, clear human words. It's a sensing, a feeling for some. I mean, some might hear, their soul directly talking to them. But there's this attunement to things being said, things being communicated out around the words that are being said. And that's a gift that water placements have. And like sensitivity as a superpower, to be able to attune to like what's really happening here. And so with the metaphors, if we break it into the modes, so the moon, we'll start with moon, as always, with yourself. So Cancer, cardinal water is the rushing river. And so the soul came here with cardinal placements to like learn through emotions. And there can be resistance to that. But think about trying to like fight against a rushing river. Like, you're not going to win, right? The river is going to win. Mother Nature will always prevail over our little tiny human selves trying to resist her. So it's, how do I work with the flow of that river, the movement of it? Because it can be overwhelming. If you think about water rapids and all of that, so much coming through. Cancers are often the emotional leaders in their family and spaces, because they really don't have an option. Like, they have to be with this, or they have to fully retreat into their crab shell and be so disconnected from the world around them and even themselves, because it's too much. And so that idea of like building a toolbox and a skill set to be with those big emotions as they come through, without shaming them or judging them in the ways that we were taught, that there's good emotions and bad emotions. That's not true. Emotions are amoral. They're just messengers. And then we have Scorpio, which is going to be the iceberg, right? Which you can see the tip of it, but there's so much under the surface with the iceberg. Scorpio goes the deepest of the deep. Nobody goes deeper than the Scorpio placements. And, the Scorpios are so misunderstood. And I think language really falls short. I think language falls short for a lot of water placements. but especially Scorpio placements. And so sometimes Scorpio placements will like go silent. They don't want to be misunderstood, so they just like stop trying to communicate what it is that they experience, and these kind of deep, dark, places that the Scorpio script can take you. The cracks in the walls, the scorpion hiding out in the cracks. Scorpios are incredibly patient. They do have the stinger, so they can get you. But they that intensity and that passion of like, bare your soul to me kind of merging that Scorpio placements can really thrive in. And so then we'll move into Pisces. Pisces is the ocean, just goes and goes and goes. Pisces, the boundaries often, they're the sponges. Pisces really do kind of do this, ruled by Neptune in modern astrology. So there can be a blurriness there of like, where do I end and where do you begin? But if Pisces can stay out of, kind of the martyr place, martyrdom, victim identity stuff, then they can be so compassionate and so generous in spirit and giving. And, they're so mystical in that way of like sensing and, attuning again to all the things not being said. And, it's a beautiful gift, beautiful to see. Okay. And so when we think about what to do, how do we get in touch with that water moon? In music and poetry for water signs is so great, because what is this poetry and music, they add that extra feeling experience to words, right? So there's something more, it's moving you with these extra layers on top of the words, which is what water placements are feeling. They're feeling stuff beyond the words. So that's a great medium to be able to move some of that through and to be able to be present and be connected. The other is to work on not judging emotions. If you feel that sting behind your eyes, one of my favorite ones to think about is like someone cuts you off in traffic and you feel the sting behind your eyes, and then you have a part show up inside that's like, stop it, that's stupid, don't cry about that, it's not a big deal, like this. Versus, can I just honor that? Like, that scared me, that startled me, and be okay crying for something that other parts within might deem trivial or a waste of emotional energy, versus just validating yourself and validating your emotional experiences when they arise, because they're just here to inform you and send you messages about what's happening within or around you. Okay. And then what else did I write down here? Well, I guess literal water, being near water, being in water, can be so soothing. Drinking your water, listening to water, water features, fountains, trickling water, working with water. Someone I think it was a fire video, wrote they have a fire water combo between their moon and sun, and they were saying like hot water is so soothing, and I love that. Like saunas, the hot tub, hot showers, hot baths, like submerging yourself in water. Like, and another thing that's so important for water, because of that infiltration, again, the ink in the water, like changing the whole cup, is clearing your auric field. Like, having energetic cleansing practices are probably most important for water people. And so thinking about that, whether it's your moon or your sun, the water suns can hold space. They can be with other people in their big emotions because they understand that. Like they have this emotional depth to them. So being with others and their emotions, being comfortable in your own emotions can be so powerfully expanding for those around you to witness and to consider their own feelings as they're coming up. Finding spaces and places and people that you can process your emotions with, that feel safe and grounding for you, because it can get kind of swirly, is another way to kind of do this work with yourself. And then if you happen to have a water moon or water sun placement and what you're doing with other people, kind of working that emotional territory out in the world, moving people through emotions. And I think again about music and poetry and healing spaces of like, this is a safe place for all the emotions to be present. Okay. All right, I'm curious what you think. Share your thoughts and your experiences with your water placements, and I'll be back soon.